It's a BNR production. And we gotta chat, y'all, because if y'all are like me as a millennial, it's been crazy. And the reason why I say that is because we are learning so often that everything that we grew up on has a whole new background story. And granted, we were kind of privy to the tea. If y'all remember when Wendy Williams used to say little things, she was keeping us on game from childhood to adulthood. So, shout out to Auntie Wendy for that. Let's get into it. So we have Diddy Love, Diddy Did, Puff Daddy, however you want to call it. And then you got your boy Dan Schneider. And a lot of people are bringing up, especially within our community, well, why is it that we keep seeing that black men are getting torn down in the media and they're losing their legacy? Well, a really good friend of mine brought up something. She said that when it comes to white men, she feels the distinct difference was that white men have their legacy torn down after they die. And as we've seen plenty of white historical figures. Everybody is rallying and advocating in terms of getting their statues removed and clipping some of these holidays that are not in favor to our indigenous folks. At the end of the day, she also stated, but for the black man, they're destroying the legacy in the present. And that's what people are at odds with. And I always say this, crime is crime. Whether you're white, black, blue, or green, or anything in between, if you commit an act that's heinous, something especially like harm against children, harm against women, harm against your fellow man in any form or fashion, then whatever you deserve as far as a penalty is concerned is what you should get. And I'm a firm believer in that. But I will say, when it comes to the legacy and the follow through or the destruction of some of these black brothers in the industry and how it's playing out, I will say that it does have long lasting impacts, especially on some of the young men out in the community. I feel like a lot of us as black individuals have watched media and watched Hollywood to say, and kind of looked at it as an opportunity or a way to get out of a current situation. And so whether you are of high or low socioeconomic status, representation has always mattered within the black community. And seeing people who look like you on camera has always been a heartthrob moment. Now we got to think about how some of this is unfolding. Now, from what I know, and all of this is like alleged information, you had the release of Diddy's house getting raided, and we kind of watched to see how that unfolded. He went on a hiatus. He was about to zip and dip on that plane. Shit wasn't happening. It was up and it was stuck. At the end of the day, some of the concern was about the naysayers or the people who stand by idly while all of these things are happening. Y'all don't got that question? Because I got that question. I want to know what's up with everybody who be around. Now, I've watched the multiple documentaries on this at this point. I watched documentaries about Freaknik. I watched a documentary about Nickelodeon Quiet on the Set. I've watched the Surviving R. Kelly documentaries. And I have to say the least, in all of these documentaries, you always have a slew of people, especially some of the adults who are on the sets and scenes of these events, who are like, I peeped it, I saw it. And what we call those are bystanders. And the bystander effect is to idly stand by while things are happening without reporting that they're actually happening, but you're in the know. And so many of these people feel like the reason why they don't report these incidents that they're observing is because they have so much to lose. Nobody wants to sit up there and rock their own boat, but sometimes at the detriment to other people. We always say this, where are our lookouts? Where are the people supporting one another in our communities, all across the board, especially our children? For all of those kids in Quiet on the Set, you had a handful of parents who were saying like, I call bullshit, I call flag on play, and yes, it did bring down my kids' career. Yes, it did change some things. However, I didn't want my child to have long-lasting impacts on their health and mental well-being. And we got to really take that in consideration. As much as people aspire to fame or to be in Hollywood, are you really prepared for some of the mental strain and stress that comes with it? To have every last move that you have documented and blown up, and people not really know what it took to stay on top or what it took to get into the industry in general. One of the hardest things I think about learning about what's going on with Diddy is seeing that was such a New York love story that everybody had. Is watching this guy who's from the northeast side of the neighborhood, like he was from Mount Vernon, which is not too far from where I grew up. And really seeing him attend to HBCU, and although it didn't work out for him, he still gave homage to HBCUs, especially one known as Howard University. So after showing money and love and everything like that, showing that you can navigate the same communities and then make it into the industry and then dominate the industry and become a multi-billionaire. Now they removed him from the Forbes list as of recently, but we know he was up there because Diddy was dancing in dollars. We knew that. And at the end of the day, it's the yielding of power. My biggest concern is how when people get to a certain level of fame, how it can go to their head. When I was watching this Quiet on Set, as some of you may know, hold for it, it's a spoiler alert, that he had people massaging his body while on set. Like he would ask women to stop what they were doing just so that he could get a massage. I mean, I didn't really view that any differently than when we used to see Farnsworth Bentley running around Diddy with an umbrella as if it was raining all the time. You know, you got to understand some of those dynamics do bring into question, like what is the power play when it comes to these individuals? Usually sex crimes and crimes of abuse are really about a sexual prowess. A lot of the time it's about yielding power over another individual. And unfortunately, in these circumstances, these individuals had money and power, which gave them a lot of access to being around all different types of people. And there's a lot of concern about how the sexuality play into what Diddy was doing. And that's really not to be considered. The reality of it is he used the same power and influence over women as he used over men. And anyone who was around him who was complicit in his behavior, who felt like they couldn't stand up and say anything about it. Because that's what it comes down to. A lot of the crimes that we're witnessing, especially those that are happening in the community, is that a lot of people feel uncomfortable about speaking up about what they're seeing. In the likes of the Me Too movement, so much information has been revealed. And I think it's hard for people to stomach some of what's going on because nobody wants to think about all of the people that they heard growing up and listened to and watching on TV and seeing it unfold. There was a point in time back in the day where if you were somebody within the industry or you were in Hollywood, you were at arm's length. People felt like it was no way to gain access to that lifestyle, that you had to shake and move and navigate to really get there. But now at the click of a button, everybody turns on the camera and you can go from one like to over 100,000 instantly. From nobody knowing who you are to people blowing you up, DMing you, tagging you, and adding you to their video. And you have so many overnight sensation stories. But then we hear a lot of the horror stories behind that about how people get into the industry and they learn every day is not what it's giving. Because these are everyday people. I listened to like how Taraji had expressed to everybody like, what you make in the course of over a year, I may make in one shot. But I'm still responsible to have to spend that money the same way you would. Pay your bills, pay some other bills, take care of my kid, do what I have to do. And I never feel like it's enough. Still feeling like you're struggling to get by. So when you have so many people in the industry like this who their lives are looked at as public figures, like they're well known to everybody around, and it looks like they're dancing in all of these endorsement deals. They got money, they got chains, they got men, they got women, they got everything that seems to be like something that people want or want to aspire to. Unfortunately, we don't always hear about whether or not they're happy. And time again, we've seen documentary and behind the scenes videos that a lot of these people who are in this specific profession aren't happy. They're really struggling with their mental health. And that's of grave concern because we have so many kids, especially me working with young children, they aspire to be in entertainment. They want to be YouTube stars. They want to be online models. They want to be people who are making it within sports and other professions within the rap industry and all the different other industries that allow for them to serve as entertainers. But people aren't really talking to them and making sure that they're mentally stoic, that they're prepared for the things that they want to do, that they have good people around them, that they know how to choose their tribe wisely, that they don't stand and fall for anything. And that's the concern that we have to do. We got to really check on our people. We got to check on our people and make sure that they're not allowing themselves to be put into situations just so that they can support their families financially. Everybody has a moral compass and a lot of stuff we don't go for. But we see a post every day on social media that says, would you slap your mama for $1 million? And half of y'all be like, aye, sir, I will do it. And that's because we make it so easy to feel like if there's a dollar sign attached to it, that all of our moral compass goes out of the window. Things that we would never say and never do are now widely acceptable. And I think that you have some people who are more or less complicit in some of the actions that they've done where they feel comfortable. But everybody has a breaking point. Some things you may say yes to in the beginning, you would say, hell no, that's going too far. So I don't point no fingers at nobody like a Carisha or anybody who was around, and even Cassie, who would literally put it all out there. If it wasn't for her and other noted producers who were saying like, hey, look, I was standing idly by while these things were happening, not only to me, but to others who are around me. And if we didn't say yes to it, our whole career was facing in the toilet. And when you feel like you got it out the mud and you worked so hard, it's really difficult to have somebody try to take everything that you work for away from you. And it's so sad that these individuals went through that, especially for all of the children who are involved in all of these processes. And the reason why I brought a Freaknik to y'all, I don't know if y'all saw it, but y'all should if y'all didn't watch it. It was so tastefully done. I enjoyed it. It was really talking about how something can start with so much positivity within the Black community. You can have a great moving force behind why you're doing what you do. And over years to come, things shift and change the image or the representation of what is happening to your event. And then we always yield the power to kind of like flex it and fix it and get it back to where it was. But it's never quite the same. And I think that's what we learned from that perspective is like what something can be or how it looks to others isn't always how it shakes out. Do we throw out the legacy of these individuals? Or do we still hold favorable some of the things that we did get? Did we have great television shows when we were kids that we watched on Nickelodeon? Yes. You know, I still feel like all that being a teen comedy skit was still ahead of its time, and the young people who came from that show were still amazing shining stars, even if we learned some of the turmoil that they experienced. Because some of our artists in the world have had experienced very dark times and some of the most traumatic events that somebody can experience. And they were still able to turn their pain into artistic form. It's unfortunate that this now sets a bar where we have to say that if you're going to have a child who wants to enter into the industry, you got to be responsible as a parent or a guardian or a caretaker at any point to really call bullshit. And when your child is uncomfortable and says no to something, hear them out. They have to live with it longer than you do. So really, really, really pay attention to your kids. And I get so tired of people saying, why do y'all automatically believe everything that's coming out? Why do y'all believe these women? Why do y'all believe these men? What took them so long? For anybody who's a trauma survivor and had those experiences where they've been subjected to abuse, it's not always easy sticking up and standing up for yourself and really calling it out, because you got a lot of people who call everything into question. What you wore, who you were with, what was in your cut. All these different things that people try to pinpoint to say that you were complicit in your own abuse. It's unfortunate that we live in a society that thinks that way, but we do. And that's when we really got to start to say that we got to be responsible for one another and really look out for each other. If something doesn't look right, doesn't sound right, doesn't smell right, ain't cool, and ain't sitting right in your spirit, you need to speak up and say something about it. I respect the artistry for what it is. The artist and the art form are two different individuals. Although one comes from the other, I can respect that there's things that I've watched and listened to in the music industry that I've enjoyed. At the same time, I can't willfully stand around supporting people who do these acts of harm. And I think people have a hard time separating those two things. This is an age-old conversation that we've had about being able to understand the difference between who you support and what you support. But I'm gonna leave y'all with that question. Like I said, in the instance of Dan Schneider and Diddy, I feel like if all of these things are true and alleged or whatever happened, then I do feel like the chickens come home to roost. Shit gotta happen. But it needed to happen. Some things need to come out in effort for us to really have a change. Sometimes the bubble gets a burst and we see things for what they really are. And it helps us create changes, necessary changes to get where we need to be. But that's just me. It's your girl, Miss Well and Woke, aka this is the Mindful Hustle. Deuces.